Welcome to the Gen X Journey podcast. Dive into all things important to Gen Xers, from advice on aging parents, expert interviews, product reviews, and heartfelt conversations. So put down the joystick, grab your Walkman, dust off your old yearbooks, and welcome to the Gen X Journey.
Hey, welcome again, everybody. This is Keith Abbott, along with my friends Stephen McKelkey and Noel Kirsch. And today we're going to talk about something that may not ever be possible again. And that's events, significant events that we all tuned into to one channel that the world basically watched together. And the reason I say that we probably won't be able to do this again is we are on streaming platforms. We're on different crazy networks, YouTube, X, all of these different outlets that you can find some sort of a source of news. But in the 80s, there were basically, there was cable and all those kind of things. But if you were going to watch an event, like one significant event, chances are it was on one of the big three networks, right? And everybody watched that network about this thing together. And so that's kind of what we're talking about. And the reason I found this idea, I'm scrolling through some things about Gen X and events that we all enjoyed. And off of this WatchMojo.com webpage, they came across this idea of some of the biggest events that the world watched together in the 80s. So I thought it was kind of interesting. When I looked through some of these events, it kind of took me down memory lane. And so what we're going to talk to is basically what they're saying here is in the top 10 events that the world watched together. And the first one that they mentioned, and I don't necessarily know that I watched this, but I remember it happening. I remember it from the day that Reagan said, tear down this wall, to the day that it happened. And that was basically the fall of the Berlin Wall. Again, young in this age, it was 1989, so I was decently old enough. I was 17 at this point.
23?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I don't even like he's right. It's sad, but I don't know. That was something that I remember. I remember seeing pieces of the Berlin Wall on display and all of the graffiti and everything about it. And that was when I was 40, right, Noel? And so
41.
Only one ping only. Anyway, so that's one that I can't say that I tuned in to watch this, right? But I do remember that this was a news event that was talked about on the news at least. So what were some that you all remember, or do you remember something about that, Noel? I know you were 3.
Yeah. No, I remember. At this time I was interested in girls and girls.
Yeah.
So,
in that order.
Yeah, I wasn't really necessarily paying attention to world events and things, but I do remember seeing on the news and stuff that happened, and remember seeing the speech, Reagan speech and stuff when he gave. I remember that like it was. I remember that, but I don't think I tuned in live or anything like that and watched the actual event happen. But one thing I do remember is all of the pieces of the wall that people had, and they were just carrying it away and keeping it. And then some of the wall made its way to America, and there was just sort of like this distribution of the Berlin Wall to everybody. Y'all remember that?
I do remember that.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. But
did you know that wall is where the pet rocks came from?
No kidding.
No, I'm joking. I'm messing
You're totally.
with you.
Oh
That's
man, you had me. You had me. You had me. Good one. I can't believe I fell for that.
But the truth was, like, the fall of the Berlin Wall was just almost like the final piece of establishing the United States as the world power. And Reagan carried the message. We'd won the Cold War. We'd basically put Russia in place, and then hey, look, we're going to take care of the rest of the problems as well. And Reagan really was a badass, in my opinion, as a world leader.
Yep.
So number 9 on their list was the I think it was one of those events back in the 80s when you just remember where you were. We've talked about this several times on the podcast, but it was the Challenger launch on January 28th, 1986. I remember that because it was a school day, and I remember they just we didn't have a TV. We didn't get to see this, but I know the TVs or schools across the nation had TVs that they showed all their kids. All their kids were watching this event live on TV, and I mean, of course, the tragedy that happened and stuff whenever the Challenger exploded, but there were a lot of people that were watching that on live TV at the time, and trying to make sense of what they were seeing.
Watching.
So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, we've talked about this in numerous episodes about this being a significant event that we can remember personally, that impacted us greatly. So yeah, huge event.
Yeah. So the number 8 item on this list from WatchMojo.com is the Super Bowl 20, and while I don't specifically remember the game, I do remember sort of the events leading up to it. It was the Chicago Bears versus New England Patriots. You remember the Super Bowl Shuffle. Jim McMahon, Refrigerator Perry. Just some iconic players. I have no idea who was on the Patriots at that time, but it was at the time the most watched, and it's really whenever the Super Bowl became this big, television event. It had always drawn a good crowd in the past, because people just, our country loves and the world loves football. But this Super Bowl is really when it just went to the next level.
Yeah.
Almost 100 million watched at home. And so just an amazing transition to just what is now just, I think we've talked about, it's $3 million for 7 minutes of ad time, or 7 seconds of ad time, or whatever it is. So
if you're paying that much, places, please get more creative. They're getting boring.
Yeah. Bring back the Budweiser frogs, please.
Yeah,
Fire.
Yeah.
There we go.
But so I would arguably say that if there is an event that is still watched by the masses, it's still the Super Bowl. Even today, it may be on different networks and stuff or different means, but that's probably still one of those events that brings at least our country together in mass every year. So that's true. I could say that's carried forward since the 80s. And I also want to give credit. Nathan Sharp was who wrote these. I want to make sure we're giving credit to those the information that we're getting. So Nathan Sharp is the author of what we're reading, and we'll add a little bit to this, but I want to make sure he gets credit off this Watch Mojo, because it's really interesting. So what else? What other events do you all remember?
You remember item 7?
I do. So do you remember it?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So number 7, and I want to talk and elaborate a little bit on not just this event, but some of these type of series. So the day after, I remember this movie vividly. So this movie was basically kind of at the height of the tensions of the Cold War in the early 80s. And it basically was a story about nuclear war. And the day after is basically the name of the day after comes of what happens after the events of the bombs falling and the fallout and what it causes as far as not only chaos, but the medical repercussions, the civil repercussions, and everything with it. And I do remember, I can still vividly remember in my mind the sound of the air raid sirens that were playing on this show. And I remember them talking about it in like an interview that they had a couple of years later about how they definitely wanted these air raid sirens to sound the way they did, specifically to make it haunting and a vivid memory for people, like so it would stick in their minds about how scary it was. But they even had it was kind of like, remember we talked about Saving Private Ryan having counseling hotlines for the D-Day survivors. So they had the same thing. They had 800 hotlines for this event as well, since it was it was vividly traumatic. I mean, you could see the flashes of people and their skeletons when the bombs were going off, and it was not easy to watch. And as a kid that was 11 years old at this point, and I know Noel, I was 48. But but it was it basically it had an event rating of 46, meaning that nearly half of all American homes tuned in to watch this show. And
crazy.
It really was. And that reminds me of other, like, there's some other that made me spur some other thoughts. In the 80s, miniseries were a big deal. Like I don't know, like maybe not the day after, but I remember things like the North and South, or the Blue and the Gray, that was a lot of Civil War. One that I was nerded out by was V. Did you all remember the television show V?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you've seen Independence Day, They stole that from V. If you're asking me, that was totally stolen from the V. So the V miniseries were these circular discs that came in over every significant city, and there was an alien race trying. It was a little different after that because they were trying to offer peace with a hidden agenda. And
Was
that kind
Will
of stuff.
Smith in it too?
Not
Was he
yet,
big?
not yet. No, I think he was still a toddler, but yeah, no. But it was very similar to it. But I remember V. I remember the blue and the gray, North and South, and a lot of those types of movies were. Or miniseries. Roots, I think, was even early 80s. Yeah. And so I think that all of those specials were a significant part of the home during those days. Do you remember one that I'm not thinking of off the top of your head?
I think you listed the one that I can remember.
Yeah,
those were the ones that stand out to me.
Was Lonesome Dove? Was in the 90s?
Was that in the 90s or 80s? I think that was the end of the 80s, wasn't it?
I'm not sure. I just remember that was a big honking deal back in the day. Whatever that was.
Let me see. Yeah. So February 5th, 1989. So that was still in the 80s as well, right at the end. But yeah, I remember hearing about that in college. I didn't see it, but I remember that it was a pretty big event. But it was pretty interesting. So that day after was kind of one of those that I vividly remember, those series type of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to understand the backdrop behind like what was going on in the world during when this movie was played in 1983. The United States and USSR at the time were heavily they were deep in a Cold War, and there was anxieties on certainly on the American side. I'm sure it was on the Russian side too, that there was going to be a nuke dropped on one side, and then the other side would respond, and basically would just wipe each other off the planet of the earth. I remember that was of course I was 9 years old in 83. And so I didn't really have a full understanding of that. I'm sure my parents probably shielded me from it. So that's probably why I never even saw this.
Right.
So they didn't want me like getting scared about something that, had no control over anyway. Yeah. But there was a lot of people freaked out about it at the time. So
it was a very poignant show, at the right time.
Yeah. Rob and I actually watched it. First time I saw it, just maybe in the past year or two, we watched it, and we were sort of talking about could that be on TV today? Like, could it? Is there an audience and an appetite for that type of story? Because we're so far removed from the Cold War and the fear that was around at the time. I mean, that the day after, it caught your attention, and sort of thinking back to where I would have been as a 10-year-old. Probably would have been a little trouble sleeping that night after I watched it. But
absolutely, some vivid images there. So that was a good one.
Number 6 on the list was the end of the Iran hostage crisis. So remember back in November of 1979, there were American diplomats and citizens that became hostages in the Tehran embassy in Iran. And it took Americans into as hostages, and so they were held captive for a year and 2 months, and they were finally released on January 20th, 1981. Was that the day that I know that was the beginning of the Reagan presidency, but was that like the day he got inaugurated, or was it like the right after, right before? It was close.
It was right after, because I believe inauguration, his first year was actually when we talked about. I think it was on January 15th. I think this is the traditional date that year. I think when he got reelected in 84 was actually like the following day or whatever. But so it was probably a little bit of a nod to Reagan's first impact as a world leader.
Yep. Actually, I just did a quick Google search. First inauguration of Ronald Reagan as the 40th president of the United States was held on Tuesday, January 20th, 1981.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So it was on the day that he was inaugurated, the prisoners got released.
Wild.
So again, that was 2 events in the same day that a lot of people watched on TV, and it was something that had captured the nation's attention, obviously, for a year and a half. These people were held captive, and then they were released, and it was a big deal. I remember seeing replays of them being taking off the plane and stuff,
Yeah.
still with their, faces covered with stuff, whatever. Anyway, one of those images. This isn't on the list. This may have been like a Texas thing, but do y'all remember Baby Jessica?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right around the corner from where I live.
I was about to say, I figured that was in your backyard, man.
Oh, yeah.
But for those that don't know, Jessica, you'll remember her last name? I just remember Baby Jessica.
It'll get to me.
Yeah.
Hang on.
But it was, while you're looking that up, she was a toddler that lived in the McClure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Jessica McClure. Odessa, or it was in Odessa, wasn't it? Anyway, Odessa, Midland area.
Yep.
And there was a well, empty well in the backyard. Talking about playing dangerously. But anyway,
right.
She slid down the well and got trapped down in this well. And there was, it captured the attention of the nation until they were able to rescue her and get her out of there and stuff. But I remember watching back then, like the 24 hours news cycle wasn't a thing. It didn't exist. So anytime the news came on, it was like, oh, what's going on with Baby Jessica and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever she finally got released and stuff, they actually news was running, for hours and hours, which back then was so unusual. But
she was stuck in there for 58 hours. And I remember the diagrams. Remember, part of the problem was like one of her legs was up and one was down, and so it was just an awkward position to pull her out of. And
but, I remember seeing updates. She's still, live and well today and stuff. So grown woman, but now I don't think she's got kids. I'm sure they never leave her sight.
Yeah, she's close to 38 years old right now, if you believe that.
Nice.
So,
crazy,
and it makes you feel old.
Oh, right, doesn't it? Yeah.
Anyway.
So number 5 on the list is the MASH finale, and one of my favorite all-time shows, and just and the final episode was truly watched by I think they said 60% of the nation or the households was watching the final episode. 106 million people. I'm curious, did y'all have a favorite character on MASH?
I love Hawkeye. I'll always love Hawkeye.
I did too.
Like
Hawkeye was my favorite.
Alan Alda has a podcast called Clear and Vivid that I listen to this day. I love everything about that character, and he's a good human. I think he helps a lot with science and research and how to communicate medical. A good guy. So yeah, what was yours? What was your favorite?
Radar.
Oh, okay.
Really?
Yeah, that's a top one.
Radar.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. What about you, Noel? Do you have one?
Mine was Hawkeye.
Yeah. So ironically, this was actually not the final episode that they filmed, believe it or not. There's a whole backstory to this, but Alan Alda actually directed this last episode, which was called Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen. And he really wanted to make sure that he captured and let every single one of the main characters have their time to say goodbye to the audiences, and so in their own way. And I thought it was so well done. And the end with BJ's Stone spelling goodbye to Alan Alda when he was flying away in the chopper. I mean, I can't imagine a more perfect ending to any. I don't think to my knowledge, I can't think of one that I've enjoyed more, that felt more complete to me. But again, I've got some nostalgia. My dad was in the Korean War. We watched that religiously together. So it was, it was significant to me emotionally. But there's rumors that show caused plumbing issues in New York City because everybody waited to use the bathroom until the commercials. And there's so many like urban legends about what happened. So it's pretty funny that if you Google like the urban legends of Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, it's a fun rabbit hole to go down if you want to. It's pretty funny. So, yeah.
My dad was a medic in the Vietnam War, and he watched MASH like religiously.
Oh, I bet.
It was
I bet.
always on when it was on. So
yeah.
If it was on today, the final episode, Robin would probably pause it several times, use the rest, and we'd probably see the end of it about 30 minutes after the rest of the country did.
Like, whatever you do not look at social media. We don't know, and everybody else does. Right?
Yeah, right.
That's funny.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, the next one that was pretty significant, definitely. Okay, so I'm a dude. Let's just be honest, right? It was not my thing, but I remember going not only to my home but going to my friend's home, and this was everywhere. And that was the marriage and the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana. Right? There was nowhere that you could go that didn't have this event on, and I didn't care what house you were playing at. One of the moms was crying. It just was the way it was, right? And I mean, do you all remember this event? Do you remember seeing this? And
yeah, I was 6 years old and I remember it. That's how.
That's
it was
significant, right?
Golly, man, we were living in Sherman, Texas, and we were at the First Baptist Church in Sherman, and in the fellowship hall, and they rolled in a TV. I'm like, I'm 6, like, why do I want to watch this? I mean, we were dorking around and playing and stuff like that, but they had the TV on, and I still remember it. It's weird. It's one of those events that you just kind of burn in your brain, but I do remember it. Even at that age,
Well, I also remember, the whole, Kate Middleton and and Prince William. I remember, and it's to me, it wasn't as significant, I think, just because I'd seen it with Charles and Diana, but it was still a big event. I think that's another one that was captured on every platform that you could see. I remember sitting when I was doing pharmaceutical sales, I think at the time, sitting in the waiting room and that sucker was on, and so it's, those events are significant. Things of that sort that remind me of it is like waiting to, and I'm not Catholic in any way, but I always thought it was interesting when they were deciding on the new Pope and how they do the smoke out of the chimney and all that. So things like that, I remember through those events, like the Charles and Diana, the selections of popes, all of those kind of, what would you call them? Like kind of pomp and circumstancy events of old that are significant to the world, even though they may not be significant to our country. It's significant to the world ritually. Yeah. So do you can you think of others off the top of your head that I'm missing that you can think of that are like that?
Well, just a thought on just the whole royal family is I don't get the fascination with it. To me, it's all make believe. They have no influence in policy. They're not decision makers in that country. I'm like, why do they exist and why do we care? Because I don't care for a bit. And,
right.
I guess the tradition of it is the only thing that's sort of fascinating to me about it. But
right.
I mean,
that's it. It's
time
the tradition.
To fold that up and turn it into a museum, in my opinion.
Right. Have you watched The Crown? Have you all watched this television series, The Crown?
No.
So I concur, Steve, that I felt the same way. But I'll tell you what, Dawn and all the girls in my family watch this pretty religiously, right? And of course they would, right? So because it's about all this royalty thing. But I actually caught myself. And I'm not a TV watcher. I will tell you, I do not. And we've talked about this offline. I just don't sit down and binge watch or anything like that. But I actually found myself kind of fascinated. It was really interesting. There's an event in the middle of or towards the end of the show that they're trying to justify all of the things that these royal families do. Have you seen this, Noel? Have you seen The Crown? No, but it's interesting because they're trying to say these things are too expensive, this and this and this, and the queen turns around and basically this probably one of the best, what do you call it? Is it soliloquy? What is it where they talk just by themselves and have like a speech? What is that called in a show? I'm trying to, like just a speech of response. I don't know the name of it. There's a name for it, but I can't think of it. James Llewellyn would know. I'll ask him someday. But anyway, but and she gives this justification as why, and it actually, I went like, okay, that's cool. I'm in, and it actually made me go, okay, I can actually almost see why, and basically it boiled down to the world needs something to believe in, and something to look forward to, and something to think is special. And so why should we take that away? I thought that was really, and that's a summary of the way she put it, but it was really impressive and impactful to me to listen to that. And like I said, I was like, okay, I get that. Anyway, so, but interesting events that are ritualistic type of things that are pretty neat on TV. Other ones that y'all going down this?
Well, number 3, Live Aid on this list. Just what an amazing event, and if you ever watch like Bohemian Rhapsody with about Queen,
Yep.
Gosh,
and
that
just
was crazy.
just their involvement with Live Aid, and just I don't remember it for some reason as a kid, but of course I've gone back and watched his YouTube videos, just all the content documentaries out there about it. It's such a fantastic event, and hopefully they do something like that again one of these days. Of course, I don't think the new artists are near as iconic as who showed up in 1985 for Live Aid, but such a great cause for trying to I guess
raise some
raise
funds
money for
something
Ethiopian famine, and such a cool time.
Yeah, it actually occurred 39 years ago this week, right? And so we actually have discussed doing a Live Aid episode, but I think and I think we all kind of agreed that it's going to be we're going to talk about it probably more next year when it's celebrating their 40th anniversary. But there is so many stories, including like you say, with Queen, with Elton John, a super cool story with Phil Collins. I mean, he was the busiest man in the world that day, I think. And so can't wait. I mean, stay tuned, because that'll be, we'll talk about that more during the 40th anniversary year. But if you get a chance to kind of research this story about Live Aid, it's a good cause with some significant entertainers and significant moments in entertainment history, I think. So
Yeah, Phil Collins' story is a really cool story. I can't wait
totally
to
cool.
dive into that a little bit more.
Me neither.
So the number 2 event is the Larry Holmes versus Muhammad Ali fight. So that's I don't know if you guys watched this. This is back in October 2nd, 1980. But they said that there was, let's see, 2 billion. That isn't right. Yeah. 2 billion people from around the world watched the fight and watched Muhammad Ali get his butt kicked. But Muhammad Ali at the time was extremely popular. It was kind of, I mean, he was I don't really appreciate this because I wasn't really up on world events at that time. Really wasn't aware of much at all back in 1980. But I mean, he was a trendsetter. Kind of some of the norms that we have today are because of Muhammad Ali in sports, and African American athletes and everything else too. He was just sort of did his own thing and kind of was like leading and breaking down some norms and stuff, and just a really kind of a impactful person to the world. But anyway, there were a lot of people that were watching this expecting him to beat Larry Holmes, and then Larry Holmes beat the tar out of him, and 2 billion people were watching this event. So that's something else. But anyway, before my time.
Yeah. And I'm going to call an audible on the number 1. Okay. So the one that this article brought up was the 1980 Moscow Olympics. And I'm sure I'm just going to call an audible because that one to me wasn't as significant as the Los Angeles Olympics of 84. I'm going to say if in my memory, and probably a lot of Gen Xers' memory, I would say and argue that the Los Angeles Olympic opening ceremony was probably one of the most vivid memory events in my, and so this article mentions Moscow, right? And that there was some, there's some controversy. A lot of countries didn't participate because it was the first one in the, in the Eastern Europe, etc. But I frankly don't remember it. I do remember LA. I remember everything about that. I remember the torch, how it was put on the archways. That's still there to this day at that stadium. And just like you said, that we talked about the spaceship that came by, and there was just so many things that stuck out of my mind of this is an American Olympic ceremony. And to me, it just filled my heart with pride about, maybe that's what it was. It's just being a typical dumb American. That's all about us, right? It was just filled my heart with pride. Do you all, I mean, is this one of the Olympics that sticks out to you most, or which one sticks out to you the most?
Well, I absolutely agree with 84. I mean, the thing that I always think of is the torch, but is also the astronaut with the rocket pack.
Oh yeah,
flying through the stadium. I was like, okay, I can't wait to have one of those. I still don't have one. And when's that gonna be available on Amazon Prime Day?
No kidding.
But I totally
Yeah,
buy
no,
one.
I totally agree. The '84 Olympics was great. I mean, it was an epic year in sports that year, as we talked about in our previous podcast format, and the Olympics was of that year was the cornerstone of that great year.
Definitely. Yeah. And we'll call back. Don't hesitate to go back and look for 1984 sports, because that was a great episode that's talking a little bit more deeply about the Olympics and other events of that year. It was a significant year in sports and a very fun one. And like I say, that was a very influential time, I think, for all three of us, as far as, sports and seeing something that's unique for the first time and seeing a world event that was exciting and touting America, especially when there's world tensions in the Cold War. There's just everything about it is a vivid memory of mine as a patriotic American, I guess I should say.
Oh, yeah.
So very, very cool.
I think for me, we talked about this before, but the 1992 Summer Olympics in Spain, whenever they lit the torch with the arrow,
freaking bow and arrow, that was
cool.
just
so cool.
Like still so epic.
Yeah.
I mean,
and was it the Atlanta
so cool.
Olympics where Ali lit the torch?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he was still shaking.
Parkinson's.
And Parkinson's was eating him up. But
yeah,
that was cool. And nobody really knew who was going to light it. They just had so many different athletes involved with that whole thing. But then it came up to him, and he was the one that did it. That was like, that's pretty darn cool.
It was super secretive, right? That nobody knew until the reveal. It was really cool how they can keep that under wraps. Again, Olympics are another one of those events, kind of like we talk about the miniseries and those kind of things. That's another significant event that over the years, like even the one that was in Beijing, really cool opening ceremony recently. But I don't know, the last couple of Olympics have lost their luster. Are you as engaged? Do you feel like our younger generations are as engaged as we were? Is it because there's so much more access to so many other things that you can be watching instead of being tied to whatever news station Jim McKay was on? I mean, is it me, or does it just, do I perceive it that way? Or is that what you all perceive too? Is it just doesn't have that impact?
I think, I don't know. I just think there's so much competing for our attention these days. It just doesn't hold everybody's attention the way it did, or at least for me, it doesn't.
Right.
It's when you're constantly bombarded with the media stuff that we get hit with every day in everyday life. It's hard for it to have anything really to have that same, hit, that same impact to you. That's what I think.
I agree.
I've always been more interested in the Summer Olympics than the Winter Olympics. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like I've noticed some commercials recently on TV. So I was like, oh, okay, that's happening this summer. I didn't know that. And of course, being a big basketball fan, I'm sort of following what the USA basketball team's doing. They beat up Serbia pretty big today. But
I will say, I was talking to my son when I was in Dallas over the weekend, and he was pumped up about this U.S. basketball team. So I could be standing corrected that some of the younger, but I feel like it's more of specific events instead of the spectacle as a whole. Maybe like everybody was tuned into Michael Phelps, right? And everybody was tuned into all the gymnastics team, or but maybe not as a whole. The spectacle of the Olympics as a whole maybe not be the same. I don't know. Simone Biles was a big deal, right? So I don't know.
I think it is a composite also. You talk about Jim McKay, and such a great storyteller as a sportscaster. And Bob Costas is, I guess, still going to be involved in the Olympics, and he's much that way. But he can also it's like rubbing your fingernails across chalkboard after a while. Just he's
not quite the same.
He's a little.
He's been dropping in some of the politics and stuff too, which just pisses me off. Even if I agree with his politics, it's like, just shut up, dude. Give us a break. That's kind of my complaint about all sports these days, is just entertain, just do your thing and shut up with the speeches and stuff. Just get out and do your thing, man.
It's one of those things that you hope that can take you away from reality for a little bit, and you can celebrate somebody or something. But I mean, it goes all the way back to the fists in the air at the earliest Olympics, right? That's on television. And I mean, unfortunately, politics have been part of Olympics, and just again, like with Ali, and it happens. But you're right. I mean, sometimes that spontaneity can happen, and then this tactical conversation is a different story, right? So I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
So,
while we were going through this 80s, I know this list is about 80s, and kudos to watchmojo.com for putting that together, because it's really a fun list. But
yeah.
I was thinking of world events, or really just American events that have happened since the 80s and that caught our attention the way that these events did. And I can think of like O.J. Simpson,
Yep.
Yes.
the 9/11.
9/11.
And I'm sure there's some other obvious ones out there I'm thinking of, but it, like, for example, to talk about the assassination attempt on President Trump, goes about a week ago now, and was that a worldwide event 4 days ago?
By the time we launch this, it'll be about a week.
Yeah. Shut up, Noel. How did everybody tune into that? So like we were watching, or we were in the car, so we started listening to it on Sirius Radio, see what was going on, because we were getting the alerts on our phone. Back when 9/11 happened, we didn't have alerts on the phone. We woke up, turned on the TV, realized something was going on.
Yeah, word of mouth, phone calls.
Yep.
Yeah.
Different day and age now that you can get your resources and your sources of information, and hopefully some of it's accurate.
No kidding.
Right. But yeah, good trip down memory lane. And again, really heavy kudos to watchmojo.com for that, because that really was a fun quick read, and I'm glad that we were able to share that. But please, I want to give all credit to them for the generating the piece and the ideas for that. We just wanted to relay that to you, and go enjoy that group and enjoy and support them, because that was a fun read, and I'm sure that there's some other really good articles that they have as well. So anyway, But yeah, that concludes this one, and hopefully that you enjoyed this. If there's other events that like this that you can remember, our listeners, we would love to hear some of the ones that impacted you the most, because I know that we're leaving out some things, and we definitely want to hear your feedback of what were some things that stood out to you that you remember that impacted you when you watched this, or watched it with your family, or heard about it and tuned into. So love to hear those.
Yeah,
yep,
absolutely.
And that will conclude this episode, and we will catch you on the next one. And thank you for taking the time to listen to us. But also remember, Facebook, Threads, X, Instagram. We are on YouTube as well. We're going to have some more YouTube content coming out very soon. Please like, subscribe, and send some feedback on things that you would like us to talk about, because there is a wealth of information for Gen Xers and a wealth of concerns that Gen Xers have. And we would sure love to be able to deep dive with you on those thoughts.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the Gen X Journey podcast belong solely to the hosts and guests and do not necessarily represent the views or opinions of any entity they are associated with. The information provided is for entertainment and informational purposes only, and should not be considered professional advice. Listeners are encouraged to seek the advice of qualified professionals for any specific issues they may face. The creators and contributors of this podcast make no representations as to the accuracy, completeness, or validity of any information, and will not be liable for any errors, omissions, or any losses, injuries, or damages arising from its use.